everybody doesn't think they have trauma. They have health issues, they have relationship issues, but this word trauma, there's a stigma to it. I always say you have to make peace with yourself and you have to heal. Like I've healed from the bones up, and it's because of going into the pain and not around it.
Welcome to Just Healing,
where we say the quiet stuff out loud.
I'm Dr. Debra.
I'm Michael Munson.
Join us to laugh, cry, cringe, heal.
Not necessarily in that order.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Just Healing. And we have a very special guest today that's going to talk about a lot of things that I haven't even touched on since I've been doing this podcast. But I'm going to let her introduce herself because, you know, people love to talk about themselves, but they do themselves such justice. So introduce yourself.
Hey, thank you so much. So my big introduction is follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road all the way back to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I was born with two parents that were high school sweethearts. And they bought me tap shoes at age 3. I did my first solo at age 5 playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And then at age 8, there was a big tornado, people, because my mother switched mental states, began coming into my bedroom and choking me almost to death. And that began switching the story into, as you know, Debra, generational trauma, ancestral trauma programming. So, you know, that's just a little cliff note of the foundation opening of who is Heather Ann Ferri.
Well, and what an opening that was. I see that we are fellow thespians. So it's going to be very, very great conversation. But you talked about a term called generational trauma. And I think we need to define that for people because I don't think they get the layers of that. So why don't we give it a definition to it?
Well, so I think, yeah, people don't. You can hear even the phrase, this is what this means. You know, your parents marry and then they're carrying generational traumas from their ancestors. Sometimes science says 7 generations back. Sometimes science says 15 generations back. But I can say after my showbiz career and I'm around 38 years old and I'm getting, my body's falling apart. I'm losing my ability to walk and Western medicine doesn't know what's going on with me. And I fall into, and you know, Debra, that this isn't just falling into a private trauma coaching practice where people who are scientists and doctors and people all over the world are starting to hire me. And I'm like, well, I don't have a degree in this, but you know what? I have more trauma than you could possibly imagine, not only from childhood, but from ancestral. And that began the journey of the mad scientist in me for about 15 years in a private trauma coaching practice where everybody doesn't think they have trauma. They have health issues. They have mental health issues. They have relationship issues. But this word trauma is just sort of like, there's a stigma to it. You know, it's a programming because when you go back to my ancestors with slavery, well, you're just enslaved. You know, there's no healing. There's no, you don't get to do anything. You're literally in chains. And when you really start to unravel and heal that, it gets really deep into how do I unchain? How do I reprogram my voice, my thought processes from everything that's been programmed around me? So, all I can say for those that are out there is I would say in my private trauma coaching practice, I would say 99.9 were clueless about generational traumas. About 3 sessions in, it was like, well, I had this pain and I'm feeling this and I didn't know, but now I'm starting to remember this happened to me as a kid, or I'm having a dream and now I'm having memories and I'm not sure if these my ancestors' memories or these a past life memory. Like that starts to unravel. And I think what you'll find interesting, I'll call you Dr. Debra, is that as my mic falls, 85% of my clients were women. Only 15 were men, 15%, and they were CEOs. And it wasn't because I wasn't open to working with men. I think that there was just in the blue collar sector of society in Pittsburgh, there was some sort of, and still is some sort of programming of we don't do this. We don't financially invest outside the box in ourselves. I mean, the first time I financially invested outside the box in myself was a big deal. That wasn't taught by mom or dad, That wasn't taught by my healthcare system. That was taught by this little inner voice of like, I don't want to be on pills and labeled all these labels. So how do I rewire? Okay, let me try that energy healer and let's see what happens. You know what I mean? And I don't know if men have that internal instinct as much as women. So we'll leave it at
Well,
that.
let's talk about a few terms that you put out there because it's very, very interesting. Because people don't realize generational trauma comes from generations of things happening within, let's say, a culture or a family system, right? And so, in that generation, you're taught these thoughts, these processes that you carry down and carry down. And I always tell people the story of the Aunt Jemima. No, and it's not Aunt Jemima. Is it Aunt Jemima syrup? Yeah, I think it's Aunt Jemima syrup, where she was the spokesperson of the syrup bottle and all of this. And, that's a very depicted presence, right? And I
Right.
remember someone posted on my Facebook because when they finally took that down and said that they're no longer going to do that anymore, they posted on Facebook, they're like, what? She was a role model for the Black community. And I had so many reactions to it, right? And so my husband had an amazing reaction that I couldn't even have put into words. And people don't know that my husband looks very white, right? And so, like a biker, okay? And so he said, interesting, let me answer that. He goes, yes, she made herself into something. Yes, she gave back to her community. Yes, she went and became this pillar and helped people become educated and all of these things that you're saying that she did. But imagine that you're the spokesperson or the symbol for something traumatic for so many generations. So it's like someone looking in your house and seeing your husband beat you and everybody witnessing it all the time, and you can never move away from it. Now imagine that you have generations of children growing up and seeing this and always being reminded of one of the worst times in their history, and you're the symbol of it. That's why they removed it, right? But those thoughts that go into, "Ooh, this is painful time in our history," goes with people and it follows them and follows them. But it goes into generations where they say, "Oh, that's okay." And they don't realize then the body keeps score. That's a book. That this is
Sure.
traumatizing. This is hurting me. I'm
Hmm.
stuffing it down. I'm stuffing it down. I'm stuffing it down, right? And so that's where you get those generational effects of I need to do something because I don't know what's going on with me, right? And so you bring it to men, and then men are like, oh, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. You just got to suck it up, be a man, do all these things. And that's why you only have 4 CEOs come in there because, well, that's the other part of generational trauma and things that happening that you learn these behavior patterns that fit who you are supposed to be in our society, right?
I love what you just said. And there's so much deepness that I can't share right now that we have a deep soul
Yeah.
connection to. But what I want to just sort of bridge is also for my journey, I was like ostracized. I was outcasted by a large tribe family of healing this stuff and just
Yeah.
trying to lovingly voice it. And it was like, well, everybody has then their own piece. Some family members are karmic, some
Right.
family members are soul. And so it gets really messy and complicated if you don't start to decompress and start to deep understand that because you think it's personal. You think, first of all, I'm trained as a child to think it's my fault for just being light, for just being love.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be almost murdered to death. And then as I'm healing all this and just wanting to heal it, it's like, no, no, we're gonna you go be sick over there. We're going over here. And that was honestly in the beginning, that was shocking to my system. Now, when I started working more and more with victims, I saw this pattern happening, and then I started working with predators too. And that was a totally different programming. But yeah, it's interesting, because at the end of the day, I always say you have to make peace with yourself and you have to heal. Like I've healed from the bones up. So I've changed bone structure from being a professional
Mm-hmm.
dancer. I know that. And so for me, I can say, wow, I'm healthier. You and I are like, we're 50, we can speak out, we can say what we want. But also I have actually a more flexible body than when I was a professional dancer in my 20s. And it's because of going into the pain and not around it.
Yeah, you sometimes meeting things head on is what changes that and begins to change who you are, right? I remember when I was in my 40s, I was going through, I don't know what I was going through, some kind of sports liberation, right? And I always hated sports and I took up boxing. That changed my life. Like I have a boxing thing in my living room still now. I mean, I had little pink boxing gloves, I had to have some style with it, right? I couldn't just but I mean, when I say change my life, because I started dealing with all that stuff, like, you can't do this, you're not coordinated. You know what? You gotta do something if you're gonna clock someone in boxing, right? And I think that's what changed. But I realized you have to change your mindset on how you're showing up and how you present it, and get rid of all those chains of people putting stuff on you in our society. And that's what's really liberating. And I noticed you went into tap dancing or something and dancing, right? And people need coping skills, but tell me, how did that begin to help you, move past some of this stuff?
Well, I could probably do a whole, as you're doing a one woman show on dance, but I will say this, growing up in a household where I wasn't allowed to speak, those shoes were my voice. And
Mm,
I knew those shoes from a past life. So when I went into New York City, and I write about this in my book, Transcending Victim to Goddess, chapter 2, and I live above a jazz club, basically, where the tap legend Jimmy Slide is hosting every month. That wasn't a coincidence. And
mhm,
then, I meet him and I talk about that in my book, and then how that activates his soul information. So it wasn't just about becoming a tap master, working with the great guys. It was really deep. That tribe, Jimmy Slide, Buster Brown, Henry Latang, Gregory Hines, oh, we need them right now more than ever, because they really had a universal sort of way of working with people. They had a lot of unconditional love. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not saying they didn't have problems, they didn't complain. They just talked a different language that was spiritual and deep. And the art of tap dancing was a language in itself. So I could really let go of my anger and all that stuff. But my parents were incredible social dancers, and they danced for 50 years every weekend socially. And when you saw them on the dance floor, you were like, wow. But when you saw them behind closed doors, there was a war going on between them.
huh,
There was karma. They had tons of health issues. They had tons of trauma. So what I people ask me is, did dance help release trauma? Actually, no. It gave me a voice, it gave me a tool to have work, it gave me a tool to find soul tribe, and that was amazing. Involuntary shaking takes out trauma. You
mm,
have to actually let go of control. So that's where the brain work that I do, OCD brain protocol, childhood trauma brain protocol. I was a control freak before that.
mm,
You have to be when you're in that survival mode of somebody's going to attack you at any moment.
mhm,
So involuntary shaking is what shook out and realigned the bones and helped me release the pain of all this generational and childhood abuse. So it's interesting, in my storyline, book 2 and book 3, which isn't out yet, I say, Jimmy Slide from the other side, and I go to this place where my mother went to elementary school to see a practitioner after my father died, which wasn't a coincidence. And while I'm in that elementary school, going through the elementary roots of my ancestors and me and all that and healing, Jimmy's like, you need to throw the tap shoes out right there. And it was painful to do. But he was like, we're activating your voice, because a lot of these women didn't have a voice. They didn't even
mm,
have the chance to have a voice. There wasn't even an opportunity to be on a podcast. Nobody
mm.
cared what they had to
No,
say.
dear. No.
Nobody cared. And so that sort of activated that. Now I'm still dancing and I love to dance, but I actually don't have any pain when I wake up in the morning, which is a
Wow.
wonderful thing.
Yeah, and that does change though. Once you change that perspective and you channel that somewhere else. It's so funny because when I was a little girl, all I wanted to do was tap dance. Like, I wanted to tap dance so bad. And my parents never let me tap dance. And so I had to channel that energy somewhere else. But so when I hear you talk about it, I'm like, I wonder if that would have, because but moving your body is so freeing for a lot of people. You have to
Oh,
let
it
the
definitely is. I don't want to say moving your body gives
yeah.
you information, Native
Hmm.
American information. So
Yeah.
when I started tapping, 10 years after training with the masters, I was channeling dialogue. People called me
Yeah.
a blues tap dancer. They could hear the dialogue, the intricacy. And I was telling you when we met beforehand, like I was compared to a Black man often. And I took it as a compliment because these guys were my grandfathers in essence, and they were the best in the world. But at the same time, it was a little confusing. I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. On the outside, I look white, but on the inside, there is other stories. And that's where
Mhm.
I started to mature spiritually and not get caught up in the exteriors of people. And when I became a private trauma coach, boy, did that change. When the masks start coming off, you see the layers of ancestral and how deep people can go. And I would love to see more of that healing happen so that we could become more spiritually mature.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, taking off the mask, taking off the layers. You talked about that you had some books. So since you've already started talking about, let's plug them just a little bit because I think they're very interesting. So tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So I have an Amazon book out. It's called Transcending Victim to Goddess Part 1. It's a series of that I'm doing with my ancestors on the other side. And part 1, we have these introductory stories, childhood, Jimmy Slide years, I go to India, all these different teaching creative arts stuff that's happening. But after each chapter, we have a lot of questions for you, the reader, things that you can dive in with your therapist, your coach, or if I come in to train employees. We also have 3 meditations to introduce. And so I want to put this out there. And I know you understand this because you want people to subscribe and you want to connect and you want to build a community, just like I do. Is that anyone that buys the Amazon book, if you email me at youmatter108@gmail.com, your order number, I will send you a private link of the 3 meditations. So you start to get an interaction and I start to build you in a community like I'm building with Dr. Debra today. I hope to reconnect with her on other projects. That's
Mhm.
what we do when we have like-minded energy. And so the only thing I have about Amazon is you don't really get to see who's buying your books, And I know there's privacy in that, but if people want to get on my mailing list for music and retreats, I'm not sending emails out every day, just whenever something's happening, but it's an activation. It's like and you might hate my book. I want to hear that too. Maybe it triggers you. You know what I mean? It's all good. But it's just, I wanted to share those meditations. And I thought this is a way that it can be more intimate.
Yeah, I absolutely. Anything to get people interacting with you and engaging with you is good because a lot of people don't have community. They don't have anyone to talk to about these things, right? And just like you said, even if it's a negative comment, you're still engaging, right? And that's part of being an author is putting yourself out there. It's part of being in the sphere of being a true extrovert. You put yourself out there and you bounce stuff off and if it comes back, that's great because you know what? I need the energy. And so whatever energy it is, I'm gonna filter it out eventually. But it keeps me alive, right? And that's
Mm,
part of it being in trauma work. People cut themselves off. And when you do that, that's when you have a lot of the other behaviors like alcoholism or drugs or
right.
people like becoming severely depressed, like all of that stuff. People have to be in a community so that sometimes they can move forward.
That's beautifully said.
But there's also something I wanted to address with you too, and thank you. You do stuff with clean water,
I
and
do.
I love how I was reading your stuff the other night, and I love how you talked about it, and so I want you to share a little bit about that.
I thank you so much. So I have to say, I'm slowly becoming compared to the modern healer Aaron Brockovich, which is a compliment if you've ever watched the movie. But I will say this, I'm not just plugging to like sell you something here. I'm actually would love somebody to do a documentary on my whole storyline with water because I was born in the state of PA. You're born where you're born for a reason. And the state of PA had documented healing waters that nobody seems to care about or understand. Even the years that shamans came over to Pittsburgh and they did rituals at the point, they were doing it with plastic water bottles, which I don't quite understand, but they were totally off on the location. And so I'm really passionate about the roots of how our healing waters in the United States got destroyed. And so that's a whole other subject matter. But when it comes to trauma, which was what we're talking about, especially men's healing, which we're talking about sexual abuse. We call that in the yogic world the second chakra, your sex organs, which is water.
Mm.
And so when you're drinking a water that has forever chemicals, if you're
Mhm.
drinking a water that has 80 plus contaminants, how does that affect your mind? How does that affect your organs? How does that affect trauma getting out of literally your bones? So for me, I was guided years ago, long story, into medical grade water in Japan. But what I learned about Japan is they actually take care of their land. They don't poison it. So they don't need a clean filter, but we do. So I couldn't use the medical device without clean water. And that began the mad scientist research. So I work with a company that's been in the United States for 53 years, one of the few companies that takes out forever chemicals, very cost effective. And it's the foundation with my clients before they decide if they want to use the medical grade Japanese device that has 7 types of waters, which is so like when I had doctors and scientists, like, I don't understand. And it's like, it's a whole education on what you can do to heal the body. Clean water is the foundation of how you absorb your vitamins, your supplements, how you upgrade. It's how you start to cry. So, what I noticed with my clients is once I got them in these water systems, they started to cry a lot more,
Mm.
even men, because it's squeezing out, it's getting into the bone, it's releasing memories, it's releasing emotions. And if we are mostly made of water, the focus should be on water. Now, I understand, and you understand, everybody's selling something, right? You got the t-shirts, you got the this, and you got the that. My thing also is, though, as a healer in the United States, is I'm concerned that we don't have water regulations happening. So I'm going to a leadership level as well as a community level. We have 20,000 water filtrations being sold online. It is confusing and nobody knows what to look for third-party certification. So to make it simple, I did an ebook. It's on my website, Heather Ann Ferri. You go to the bottom of the page, Water Matters. You download it, read it. Go through some of the links, ask questions. I know it's confusing. Why 2 different companies? What is electrolyzed reduced water? Electrolyzed reduced water is more PubMed research than you could possibly imagine. Now I've planted a seed. What is
Mhm.
clean water? What really defines clean water? Because people will say, well, I have this and I have that. And you don't want to, in essence, like you want to support that they're doing something, right? This is awesome. But then you go, what does that actually take out? Do you understand how to look at certifications? You know, um, and do you know that, oh, that company is under lawsuit? Do you know that? My biggest message today, and it's not going to be popular with some people, is we really need to let go of the plastic. We really need to let it go.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of traumas, well, I do know what kind of trauma is related to that. It's related to the story in Pennsylvania and how the healing waters were stolen and then bottled. So if
Mm.
we don't go to the roots of why something was created, and that's where I went to with water, then we don't understand how we get back to our original DNA, where we don't have diseases as we age the way we do right now. So we have women being born, we have children being born with so much too. They're sitting in water,
Mhm.
for 9 months.
Yeah, they're sitting in water and the water that has all kinds of things in it. What's interesting to me is that when I was a kid and growing up, and you'll remember this, okay? I was sitting in elementary school and they were like, what is it? Save trees, get plastic. And there was a mandate that we had to all like not use paper bags or something, right? And I'm just like, but why wouldn't you use a natural product that you can get rid of? Like, why are you gonna pollute? I just kept thinking there's gonna be so much plastic everywhere one day, and it's a man-made material. I said this as a little kid, but then remember
Wow.
everybody had to mandate that you had to use plastic bags, and now everybody you have to use paper bags. Like, I'm like, can we get it together, people? Together because this is sending weird messages.
Well, I think what you just tapped into is one of my sort of passions when I do coaching
Mhm,
is I know how to get to that inner child, and the inner child has the innate wisdom.
mhm,
We've dumbed down our inner children with toxins, with pollutions. And so for me, that's part of my passion with the water movement too, is because our children need to be in a healthier, simpler place. And honestly, the consumer saves lots of money, but that's a problem for
Yeah.
producers. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like when you start to teach them how this is long term going to save a lot for the planet, it's going to save a
Mhm.
lot of money for you. But then, this is a billion, possibly $1 trillion industry that's honestly out of control. I was just putting a TED talk together for the water, and 50 billion plastic water bottles sold a year in the United States.
It's just crazy. When Starbucks first came out with selling water in the coffee shop, I remember that. I said, "You know what? It's gonna take off." And people
Oh,
were like, "No,
yeah.
it's not. They're selling water and water bottles." I said, "Because people are lazy."
That
Yep. They like
that's it.
convenience when they can just go turn on their tap or get themselves one of those little things on there to filter it out or whatever you wanna do. Go up in the mountain yourself and get the water with the bucket, okay? But,
Right, right. No, because I
Yeah,
love to go to the parks to work out, and I love to
yeah,
see children play. I mean, what I do is for their future, and it's about getting water fountains again, and obviously a
yeah,
filter with the water fountain, but it's that movement again. We got to go
yeah.
back to old school. And it's interesting because before the healing waters, where the natives were using this water and then they killed them and they stole it and
Mhm.
created a resort, all this is documented, didn't make it up. They bottled it in glass. It
Yeah.
started out in glass for the healing properties, and then they all became an industry.
And it
So,
tastes better in
oh,
glass
of course it
with some
does.
ice. Oh my god, my favorite thing is to drink water out of a wine glass
Oh,
with
yeah.
ice in it. Oh,
Yeah.
that is tastes so delicious to me. And I do use my water bottles. You may have saw me with my little water bottle, but
Hey, you know what? Maybe I'll plant a seed, maybe 2 weeks from now, and you'll be working out and you'll be like, maybe I should download that water ebook from that fairy woman. Maybe I should upgrade. It'll come in, Deborah, some moment. It'll come in. And if it
it'll come
does,
in.
we'll do a water show.
Oh, that would be fun because we could make the water different colors and all kinds of stuff and add sprinkles, and it would be like so fun. I think people would just like watching us play with the water. Like,
Yeah.
well, listen, we are almost out of time, and I want to ask you, what do you want to leave people with?
I just want to leave people with I'm so grateful that they're here today listening to us. I'm so grateful for you, Deborah. This is a gift for me because I get to use my voice
Mhm.
and that helps heal my generational bloodline. So I just feel so blessed to be with all of you today and I would love to have you a part of my community, and I'm not lying. I hope to be a part of Dr. Deborah's community. It's all interconnected.
Well, one thing you know about me, when I love somebody, I don't let them go because I just always want to share that love all the time, especially someone who makes me grin and smile. Oh my God. When people create joy for me, like I want to give that joy back, but I want that joy all the time. So you are absolutely now part of the Just Healing family, but also part of the Dr. Deborah family. Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
if you want to be in contact with her, her information is below, but you can always contact us in all our social media or contact me and somebody will get back to you. And this way we can all stay connected and have a community. And thank you for coming on this show. It was an amazing show. I'm sure people are going to love this one because of all the energy that they're going to get out of it. And thank you for watching this episode of Just Healing. If you'd like to learn more, get involved, or find community, visit menhealing.org.